Welcome back, brave souls. Halloween is here, that time of year when the nights grow long, the lights flicker, and every shadow feels just a little too alive. Tonight we're diving into a world where fear isn't fought with weapons, but with wit, where puzzles hide dark secrets, and every click draws you closer to the truth, or something far worse. These aren't your usual horror experiences. No jump scares to cheapen the moment, just slow, creeping dread that seeps in through eerie dialogue, forgotten places, and stories that linger long after you shut the screen. So light a candle, pour yourself something strong, and settle in. We're exploring 10 chilling adventures perfect for a Halloween night, each one ready to test your curiosity, your courage, and maybe even your sanity. Because sometimes, the scariest thing of all is what waits behind that next click. Let's kick things off with a descent into the darkest corners of the human mind. I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream is a psychological point-and-click adventure developed by Cyberdreams and released in 1995, based on the haunting short story by Harlan Ellison, who also lends his voice to the game's sadistic villain. This isn't a world of monsters or jump scares. Humanity is already gone. A deranged supercomputer has wiped out almost everyone, sparing just 5 survivors to torment for eternity. You step into each of their stories, exploring guilt, cruelty, and the fragile line between punishment and redemption. It's an experience that's as disturbing now as it was nearly 30 years ago. Not because of what it shows, but because of what it makes you feel. Few games dig this deep into the horror of consciousness itself. It's a grim reminder that sometimes the scariest place you can be is trapped inside your own mind. Some horrors aren't born from monsters, they're inherited. The Black Mirror, released in 2003 and developed by Future Games, is a gothic point-and-click mystery that pulls you deep into the curse of a decaying family estate and the darkness that lingers within its walls. You step into the shoes of Samuel Gordon, returning to his ancestral home after a mysterious death, a reminder that sometimes the most terrifying hauntings come from the bloodline you can't escape. Welcome to the town of Harvest, a place that looks perfectly normal until you start paying attention. Harvester, released in 1996 by DigiFX Interactive, is one of the strangest and most disturbing point-and-click adventures ever created. You wake up in a picture-perfect 1950s suburb, with no memory of who you are, surrounded by smiling faces, crumbling morals, and secrets that shouldn't exist. Every conversation feels off, every character seems rehearsed, and the deeper you dig, the more you realise this town runs on something far more sinister than small-town charm. It's dark, satirical, and brutally self-aware. A twisted reflection of American culture wrapped in grainy FMV cutscenes and old-school adventure puzzles. The horror doesn't come from what jumps out. It's in what you're forced to agree to, just to keep going. It's unsettling, uncomfortable, and utterly unforgettable. A game that asks one simple question. What would you do, just to fit in? Few games capture the feeling of a nightmare quite like this one. Darkside, released in 1992 by Cyberdreams, is a psychological horror adventure inspired by the biomechanical artwork of H.R. Geiger, the visionary mind behind Alien. You play as Mike Dawson, a writer who moves into a new home, only to discover that something otherworldly has chosen him for a purpose beyond comprehension. What begins as a simple case of déjà vu quickly spirals into a descent between two worlds, one human, one grotesquely alien. With its time-sensitive puzzles and disturbing imagery, Darkside doesn't rely on screams or shocks. It builds its horror through unease, the quiet realization that reality itself is bending around you, and there's no way to tell where the nightmare ends and your sanity begins. It's haunting, surreal, and deeply uncomfortable. A reminder that sometimes the scariest monsters are the ones living just beneath the surface of your own mind. Next up, we have a game that proves horror and humour can haunt the same shadow. The Darkside Detective, developed by Spooky Doorway and first released in 2017, is a supernatural point-and-click adventure that swaps jump scares for dry wit and ghostly charm. You play as Detective McQueen, the only thing standing between the ordinary city of Twin Lakes and the bizarre underworld that lurks just beneath it. Each case leads you deeper into pixelated mysteries, filled with cursed libraries, possessed houses, and a partner who never quite takes anything seriously. It's light-hearted on the surface, but there's something genuinely eerie about its world. A place where laughter and fear share the same flickering light bulb. The writing is sharp, the puzzle's clever, and the atmosphere feels like a late-night cartoon that went just a little too dark. It's proof that you don't always need terror to make a Halloween classic. Sometimes a smirk in the dark is just as chilling. And while that one made us laugh in the dark, this next game reminds us what happens when the darkness laughs back. Sally Face, developed and self-published by Steve Gabry, began its unsettling story in 2016, unfolding over 5 haunting episodes that blend mystery, grief, and the supernatural. You play as Sal Fisher, a quiet teenager with a prosthetic face and a past he can't escape. Through his eyes, an apartment complex becomes a maze of secrets, strange deaths, and voices that whisper from behind the walls. What starts as an offbeat coming-of-age story slowly unravels into something much deeper, a layered exploration of loss, trauma, and the thin line between imagination and reality. It's beautifully drawn, painfully human, and filled with the kind of melancholy that lingers long after the screen fades to black. It's a reminder that sometimes the monsters we fear most are the ones we carry with us. If Sally Face explored the monsters within, this next tale invites us to step into their world completely. Fran, developed by Killmonday Games and released in 2015, is a hand-drawn point-and-click adventure that feels like a twisted fairy tale told through the eyes of a child who's seen too much. You play as Fran, a young girl struggling to make sense of her parents' mysterious deaths, trapped between the real world and a nightmarish realm that reflects her fractured mind. Every puzzle feels like a coping mechanism. Every character a metaphor for loss, guilt, and the desperate search for meaning. Its haunting art style hides something deeply personal beneath the horror. A story about trauma, innocence, and the thin thread that holds reality together when it begins to unravel. It's dark, tragic, and strangely beautiful. All at once. A game that doesn't just frighten, it breaks your heart, one click at a time. From the fragile mindscapes of childhood to the cold soil of folklore, this next game buries its horror in history. The Excavation of Hobbs Barrow, developed by Cloak and Dagger games and released in 2022, is a chilling folk horror adventure set in the English countryside, where the fog never lifts and the locals never quite meet your eye. You play as Thomasina Bateman, an antiquarian documenting ancient barrows. But what begins as a routine dig quickly unearths something far older and far less willing to be disturbed. The story unfolds slowly, through quiet conversations, uneasy stares, and the sense that every word hides a warning you've already ignored. It's gothic horror told through restraint. Beautifully written, steeped in atmosphere, and masterful at making you feel like an outsider in a place that's forgotten how to welcome strangers. A haunting reminder that sometimes the past should stay buried, because what's buried isn't always dead. After unearthing ancient terrors in the English countryside, our next journey takes us to the heart of cosmic dread. Dreams in the Witch House, developed by Atom Brain Games and released in 2023, reimagines H.P. Lovecraft's classic tale as a slow-burn, point-and-click survival experience. One that feels more like living through a nightmare than simply watching one unfold. You play as Walter Gilman, a brilliant student renting a cheap room in Arkham while studying strange mathematics. But sleepless nights soon twist into something far darker. Whispers in the walls, symbols that won't stay still, and dreams that begin to follow you into waking life. What sets it apart is how grounded it feels. You're balancing studies, sanity, and survival while something ancient scratches just beyond the veil of reason. It's both cerebral and supernatural, drenched in unease rather than gore. a haunting blend of logic and lunacy, reminding us that sometimes knowledge itself is the most dangerous thing you can seek. We end our journey in a place where dreams, guilt and death all blur together. A fitting finale for a night spent exploring the strange and the macabre. Strangeland, developed by Wormwood Studios and released in 2021, is a surreal, point-and-click descent into a twisted carnival built from grief and memory. You awaken in a nightmarish fairground, haunted by a voice that knows you better than you know yourself. Every attraction is a metaphor, every riddle a confession, and the further you go, the more you realise that this world isn't trying to scare you. It's trying to understand you. Beautifully written, hauntingly scored, and filled with imagery you'll never forget, Strangeland feels like poetry wrapped in pixels, the kind of horror that asks for introspection rather than escape. And that brings our countdown to a close. Whether you prefer haunted manors, cursed towns, or the horrors of the human mind, there's a world waiting for you behind every click. Have a happy Halloween, and if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more dark discoveries. Until next time, keep your lanterns lit and your curiosity alive.